Hi, my name is Stephanie Rank. I am the founder and career coach of Next Step Career Services. I'm based here in Boise, Idaho, and I'm very excited to welcome my friend and colleague, Mark Misiano. He is the founder career coach of Resume Ready and based in Richmond, Virginia. And so he started his career in higher education and then became an entrepreneur the same year I did in 2018 when he established Resume Ready. So he is also a certified career coach, a certified professional and executive resume writer, and a certified digital career strategist. So, Mark, thank you so much for being here today.
Of course, I'm very excited.
Oh, this is gonna be so much fun. So Mark and I have had so much fun just building our business and learning to be career coaches and really helping our clients land the dream job and to make better money, to have a better work-life balance, and to just achieve their dreams. That is what we're all about. So I'm very excited about it. So I want to kick off today. Let's talk a little bit about job search strategy because what I find is some of our clients show up and they have no idea to how to go about a job search. They think, oh, let me just apply to 60 applications a week, or let me just call all my friends and see what it's just a mess. It's a mess of just throwing darts at the wall. So I you have a wonderful way of describing a job search strategy. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, I almost exclusively now will only work with clients who want to be strategic about their job search because the idea of the click, 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 and then sit on your hands and wait to see what happens is never going to work. And so for my clients, people who go, I'll just take a resume. I'm like, right, but we need to do so much more than that because it's so much more than just having a resume that works. There's so many applications for every single position now where pre-pandemic, you might have seen 250, 400-ish resumes per job. You're seeing double that or more for every single position that's out there. And so it's not just enough to have a good resume anymore. Even a resume professionally done by you or me could still get lost in the shuffle. And so I like to work with clients who want to be strategic, who want to really plan out how they're going to tackle their job search strategy. And so I typically tell people that there are kind of three main ways that you can look for a job. Number one is recruiters. You can work with third party recruiters, internal recruiters, but it's that idea of working with somebody else because they have some insider knowledge that you don't have. And so the benefit here is that you're able to tap into their network, to their knowledge base. They know what companies want. They understand corporate culture. They understand maybe what the interview process looks like, where you might not if you go into it blind. And so recruiters can be a great source of information and knowledge. You and I know a ton of great recruiters who just want the best and want to fit people with the right positions.
Mhm.
But I also tell people that you have to remember how, especially third-party recruiters, recruiters that don't work for HR at the target company where you want to work, how that process works. It's not like a headhunter. You're not their
Mm-mm.
client. You're their product.
Yes.
And so they get paid if you get hired and stick in that position. And so where does that money come from? Probably your salary. So it might limit a little bit how much you're able to make because of the way that the structured pricing works for that. The two main ways that I teach people to job search are what I have kind of coined my own phrases here as high volume and high impact. And so high volume is what you talked about before. You see people who like 60 applications in a single day and they hit quick apply or whatever one click option on whatever platform they're using. And this is absolutely a job search strategy. It is part of an overall larger set of tools that you can use. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I typically treat this, I think I've heard this from you before too, is that I typically treat the quick apply almost as like a research phase where you're looking at things going, oh, yeah, I could do that. It's not like the perfect job for me. It's not ideal. It's not exactly what I want to be doing forever, but I could do it. So I'm not going to waste the time applying online and going through the whole thing and reaching out to people. I'm just going to hit quick apply. And if it happens great. But statistically speaking, this is the worst way to find a job. And most people don't know that. You will hear back from maybe 2 to 4% of applications that you submit with a quick apply, one-click option. It is
Correct.
dishearteningly low, right?
Yes, it's very, very low.
It's so frustrating because there are really qualified people who are doing it this way, and I see clients do it this way and then get frustrated, and I hate to say this, I'm gonna get so much hate for this, But I see a lot of people who go, I've applied to 300 jobs and I haven't heard back from a single one. And I'm really upset and mad about it. And I worked so hard. And I go, have you? Have you really worked that hard though? Because if you're just hitting quick apply, are you really working that hard? I get that it's frustrating, but there's so much more we can do. So there's the high volume approach. As many as you can, as often as you can, as quick as you can. It's a numbers game. You're allowed to play the numbers game. That's totally fine. I find that the much more effective way to find a job is what I've coined high impact. So a high impact job search is one in which you go above and beyond. And is it frustrating that you have to do this? Yeah. And is it time consuming? Yeah. And will you still get rejections? Absolutely yes. But going above and beyond and really trying harder is the best way to find a job statistically, right? We know that
Mhm.
building relationship is the best way to do it. And so it starts with applications that go through the company website. Let's cut out that intermediary, right? We don't
Yes,
need
yes.
LinkedIn, we don't need Indeed, we don't need those things because if you think about it, companies that are getting really unqualified candidates from places like Indeed or LinkedIn are going to stop posting there. So Indeed and LinkedIn, they have incentive to send to the company only people that they think are qualified for the role. Then you have to get through an applicant tracking system and a HR and a screening call just to get to the hiring manager. And so if we can cut out as much of that intermediary stuff as possible, statistically, we're going to get a job faster because we're cutting out everything in between us and a job. And so this looks like a lot of different things. You could, number one, certainly always apply on the company website instead of going through a third party platform, but then starting to build connections and make relationships. And so, I mean, LinkedIn's search bar is crazy powerful. It's a Boolean search. If you don't know what Boolean is, please look it up because it's fascinating and interesting. And there's so many ways that you can use it. You and I have learned a lot about Boolean search.
Yes.
Um, and it's really interesting because you can identify, you can narrow down to 2 or 3 people at a company who are gonna be the ideal people for you to talk to. So searching, search by job title that you think might be the level above you. Search by, current organization, search by different keywords. You can look for folks who are, in your network on LinkedIn specifically. That's a first level connection, someone who's directly connected to you. You can look for second level connections, which is like if you and me are both connected to our friend Angie, but you and I are not connected, we're second level connections because we have Angie in common. And then I could reach out to Angie and say, would you mind introducing me to Stephanie?
Right.
Right. So there's the opportunity to build a relationship there. Or you could reach out on your own, short and sweet. You don't need a novel to introduce yourself. It can be as simple as, I love what you're doing at XYZ company and how you're on the forefront of innovation, or you're serving clients or patients in this way. And then you say, I'd love to talk about how I can contribute to your team. And then here's what I do every time. Increasing response rates is always our goal in a job search. We just want people to talk to us. Here's how you get people to answer you. Ask them a question. So, 2 paragraphs that are 2 sentences each is all you need to introduce yourself and tell them you want to talk. That last sentence of your last paragraph is, do you have 10 or 15 minutes on, the morning of Monday the 18th so that I can learn more about how you're doing X, Y, or Z, right? So it's not how I can get a job with you. It's about
No.
building a relationship, right?
Right.
That's secondary or tertiary to the relationship, learning about the company, learning about their pain points so that you can walk into these 10 or 15-minute conversations. I've coined curious conversations. I actually stole this from Sunday Marquardt, who's a coach that we know. Curious conversations are about building the relationship, though, asking questions, learning from them. Sometimes I've had people do this and get mentorship opportunities out of it, right? It's not always leading to a job, but it leads to opportunity. And so if you can walk in with a curious mindset, ask 3 or 4 insightful questions, people are going to love that. So you ask that question specifically with a question mark at the end of it because the human brain hates ignoring questions. We will ignore a statement. I'd love to talk. I can ignore that. Do you have 10 or 15 minutes to talk? That's not going to break my day. I could do that. I might want the break from my busy day, right? And so you can ask people for those conversations, be curious. And then at the end of those curious conversations, you say, wow, it's been our 15 minutes. I don't want to take any more of your time. The only other thing I'll ask is there anything I can do to support you professionally? It sets you up as a kind and caring and giving person. Even if they say no, the reaction is probably going to be, is there anything I can do to support you? But you can take this a number of ways because you could say, is there anybody else that you think I should be talking to? Ask for more introductions. Bigger network means more opportunities. You can say, I was excited about joining XYZ company, but now after talking to you, you make it sound really exciting. Would you take a look at my resume to see if I would fit it on your team anywhere? Right? Like
Yeah.
you can, there's so many different ways that you can ask based on what happens in that conversation and how you build rapport with people. And so this high impact approach is about building the relationships, making the connections, send the email to introduce yourself and attach your resume, shoot a message over on LinkedIn. And because your LinkedIn is nice and new and shiny and updated, you don't have to send your resume. They can just look at your LinkedIn profile. If you can't find somebody to address your cover letter to, don't do to whom it may concern or dear hiring manager. If you can't find somebody on LinkedIn, call the main company number and say, because you're going to get a gatekeeper, right? Someone whose job it is to answer the phone and route calls. So you say to them, I'm applying for a job. I don't want to bother the person who's hiring for this role, but I really want to make a good impression and address them on my cover letter. Do you mind giving me that person's name? They might say no, but at least you tried, right? Address it to the VP of the company. Even if that's not who you'd report to, it shows that you did something. And so the high impact is all about doing and going above and beyond so that you actually make an impact. It is still disheartening. It is still frustrating sometimes, but this approach, you basically increase your response rate tenfold. 20 to 40% response rate is what you can expect here, which is ridiculously high in a tough job market, even though it's dishearteningly low because we know that we're qualified and we want these jobs. So
Right.
there's how long did that take me? Probably like 10 minutes to go through. But I'm so passionate about it because I hate seeing people go, I've tried so hard and nothing has happened. And I'm like, great,
Yeah.
let's try different.
Be different. Be different. And I use the same approach basically because we talk about finding the hiring manager or the right people to connect with on LinkedIn. And it has been astounding when they actually land on a hiring manager and they're like, wow, that hiring manager, I've seen it over and over. They're blown out of the water because they can't believe that a job seeker found them just by searching for them on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. Can I tell you a story about when this worked?
Yes.
Okay, I love this one. This is my favorite one. So I was working with a client in higher education who wanted me to be the director of financial aid at a community college in Virginia. So he reached out to the VP of finance and emailed her directly. Higher ed is great because everyone's email address is available and online. It's
That
fantastic.
is true.
You can find people every time. I love that. So he reached out to a woman who was the VP of finance and he was really excited. He did all the right things. He emailed her. It was a short message. It was sweet. It included his resume. It asked for the 15-minute talk. Like he did everything right. He was so excited about it. She emailed him back and he was like, and then he called me and he was like, so the first sentence of my email to her said, I applied to the director of financial aid position on the website. She wrote back and said, you have to apply on the website. And he was like, what in the world? Like he was so mad, right? He's like, I did everything. I'm like, I know it'll pay off. Like, keep at it. I promise this will work. So eventually he gets an interview. He gets hired. He gets the job. He's in the role. He has a really good relationship with the VP of finance, who is his direct supervisor in this job, right? He gets to know her for a couple months and then says to her, do you remember when I emailed you and said that, like, what happened there? Because, like, like, he's like, knowing you now, that's not how you email. She was like, I do remember. She said, HR only allows us to communicate with candidates by telling them to apply online. It's the only thing I am allowed to say to you, but I didn't
Yeah.
want to ignore you. And so she said, because I got that email from you when I went to HR to ask for the applicants, I asked them to put you on the top of the stack. That's what got him the job. And so she's like, I'm sorry, but it was the only way I could communicate with you. And so even when it feels like it's not working, we don't know what's happening in the back end of things. And so it's still worth it, even when it feels like this isn't working.
Yeah. And I've talked about that too, where it's just about make your name visible. So you show up on LinkedIn and you show up in their database. And I mean, if you're showing up in all of these spaces, they're going to recognize your name. and they're going to want to see.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, the visibility thing, it's really, really tough because you do have to go through ATS, the applicant tracking system, and there's so many types and the way recruiters use them can vary. And so unfortunately no best practice for ATS. Like we just you have to make your resumes as simple as possible, but nice as possible because you want them to be read and easily scanned and all of those things. So yeah, it is tough. So building relationships is very, very
It's
important.
balance. I love what you said about visibility, and this made me think of something I heard, I think in a webinar recently about visibility on LinkedIn. I'll have clients say to me like, "Well, I found them, but I didn't click on their profile." Well, why not? Like, we want them to see that you're looking at them, right? Especially if you're going to message anyway, which I'm recommending. Like, but there's so many more ways you can do this too. For your target companies, I never thought about this until I heard this in a webinar this year. And I've been doing this for a long time, and this never occurred to me. Go to the company pages and follow the company
Yes.
page. You'll see them in your feed. Then hiring managers will see who you're following, and their company is one that you're following. It just shows greater interest. It's another touch point. It's another opportunity to be visible.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. So something else I wanted to bring up was so on top of high impact, high volume, you also have to be strategic about the type of job that you're going for, right? And so, what I talk a lot about with my clients is the timeline of job searches. So, I think the national average, the last time I checked, the national average was about 7 months. I believe it was around 7 months. But that's encompassing every job in the US and all of that. So, let's just say 7 months. Your timeline can vary based on that. So, number one, if you're going for the same role in the same industry, you're probably going to have a quicker job search because you're qualified, you have all of the experience, you can walk in, you have stories to share, you're a shoo in, you're perfectly qualified for that role. So, that'll be a very quick job search. If you're trying to go for the next step up, it might take a smidge longer because especially if you're going from an individual contributor to a manager role where you're people
Yes.
managing, it can take a little bit longer because then you have to prove that you just need a chance to be a people manager and you're going to be
Right.
excellent at your job. So that
And
can take a little.
harder to
Mhm.
do that if you're moving companies. Easier to do it internally
Exactly.
because you're well known.
Exactly. 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 So thinking out like leaving the company. Um, Or you could do a similar job in a different industry. That's going to take a little bit longer because you don't know that industry. And there are many, many hiring managers that think, well, if you don't know my industry, you're not going to be good at this job, even though you can do the job, the responsibilities and the tasks and all of that. Like you can do the job.
Yeah.
So that takes a little longer. The longest job search is new job, new industry. That takes forever.
Ever.
It takes forever because you have to figure out your transferable skills and which ones matter to the hiring manager and tell and again, you're up against competition of people with the same years of experience in that industry or in that job. So again, like you don't have to have a 7 month job search, but it can take longer based on the leveling that you're going for. So I definitely encourage my clients to go for the next step. Like that is what I'm all about. Like if you're ready to make that next step, let's do it. Like how do we get you there? But you know, do realize it's going to take just a little bit longer. Takes a little bit
That's
longer.
right.
Mhm.
Well, I like the planning of that too, and setting people up with the right expectations for that because it can help them then plan. I'm working with this amazing woman right now who is super intelligent. The only thing she's ever really done is she worked in restaurants forever. She always worked her way up. She becomes the general manager. She's great at the training and the onboarding, and she wants to go into curriculum and instruction design.
Oh, that's a
She doesn't
change.
she doesn't have a degree, right? And so we talked about, all right, then how are we going to make this transition? It's about certifications, then, right? Let's get you through programs that are going to teach you the skills you need so we can claim those skills on your resume. Let's make sure you're doing LinkedIn learning courses to get you the software skills that you need to be able to say, I can use these programs and tools that you use every day. And so we had to go through this big, long planning process, but it worked out. I mean, she was starting to get interviews immediately with her resume because and one of the things that they're telling her in interviews is like, "Oh, you learned all of this just to come interview here? That's amazing." Right? Because I can teach anybody any software ever. Anyone can learn hard skill like that, right? Might take
Mhm.
others longer or shorter, but anyone can learn a technology. Not everybody can learn the mentality of, I'm going to go after the thing I want. I'm going to study hard and I'm going to pursue it and I'm going to be smart about it. I'm going to be tenacious, right? Tenacity is something you can't really teach. It is born
Mm-mm.
in you. It is innate. And when they saw that tenacity in her, they were like, "Oh, we can trust her to like take a project and run with it."
That's
That meant a lot
amazing.
to them.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm big about continuous education, especially if there's a skill gap, go and learn, right? Even if it's a Google course or Coursera, or you go to a university and get a certificate, like whatever it is, go and learn and add that to your resume, add that to your profile. And even when I get into salary negotiations, I always ask, my client, are you interested in going back to school? You should talk to them about covering tuition, or are there certifications that you get? Can you negotiate, every year you go to a conference, right? Whatever it is, so you can keep adding to your tool belt. You can keep adding to your tool belt with the skills that you learn. And it's a good investment for the company because you're constantly innovating, you're constantly learning new things, and new ideas come from that. So, yeah, continuous education, whether you're in the middle of a job search or even after you've landed the job, you got to keep going with that. Like it makes a huge impact.
Absolutely. Well, and like there's just always something new. You and I have been doing this forever, and I go to a webinar and I learn something brand new, or I take a
Hmm.
certification. And that's the thing too. I think that the continuous education thing is so important because yes, it might teach you something brand new, or you might walk away with like a little nugget that you're like, oh, I can take this and I can run with it over here and apply it somewhere else. And so that like the ability to kind of uh see the potential in things and then adapt it for you and your situation is so important. And then, like he's like talked about transferable skills and identifying what those are, it starts to become easier when you make a habit of actively thinking about it
Hmm.
through continuing education like that.
Oh, nuggets are my favorite. Because I can sit in a webinar and learn all of these things, but then applying it to my business or to my client work or to anything takes a minute. Takes a minute. Like that is a long process of incorporating all that information. Now I'm at that point where it's like, ooh, that little tidbit, I can take that and run with it. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
All about the nuggets.
You know what? One thing I'll throw in here too, because you mentioned, even if you're in a job search, do the continuing education thing. I think one of the things that people really struggle with is scheduling out what a job search looks like. Either they're really, really busy with their full-time job and they're employed, and then job searching becomes a full-time job, or what ends up happening is people are not employed, and it is really difficult to structure a day on your own incorporating job search. It's
Hmm.
tough. And so I typically will tell people that, yeah, this could be a full-time job. You absolutely could do this 8 hours a day, and you also probably shouldn't.
Yes.
Because it's just too overwhelming, right? And so the kind of the some of the strategies that I'll tell people, I wanna hear some of yours too. Let's kinda go back and forth on this because I have a couple. Um, I tell people once we go through, like, high impact, high volume, and the kind of the differences between the 2, I always tell people to incorporate both into their job searches any day that they're job searching, whether that's Monday through Friday, or even if you do it like Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday to give yourself a little bit of a break to do other things. Especially like, if you're home all the time and you're not employed, make Wednesdays your day to clean the house and not worry about the job search. Or make Wednesdays your day to go grocery shopping and do your errands. Like do something else so that you feel like there's a break. But in your day, structure it in a way that's sustainable, and so always throwing things into 30 or 45-minute chunks and then stepping away. And so
Mhm.
whether that's I'm going to do my high volume and just quick apply to as many as I can for 30 minutes and a 10-minute break, and 30 minutes and a 10-minute break, and 30 minutes. That's an hour and a half of high volume job search. You can apply to dozens of jobs in an hour
Yeah.
and a half, but you're breaking it up where you have those 10-minute breaks, even if it's Only 30 minutes. I don't care if you're right in the middle of anything. When that little timer goes off to tell you that it's been 30 minutes, stand up, leave the space that you're job searching in. Do not scroll your phone. Do not scroll Facebook because your brain doesn't distinguish between scrolling job descriptions and scrolling social media. It's the same thing to your brain. You will get just as burnt out when you think you're taking a break. And so stare outside for a few minutes, go for a walk, make a sandwich, like anything that gets your eyes off of a screen because you need the break. Your brain needs the break. It's going to be there when you walk back in. Then you've done your, 2 or 3 iterations of your high volume. While you're doing that, because it's sort of a research thing on top of an application thing, anything that you find that you're like, that is the perfect job for me, you pull that one, save it over here, and then after you do a couple of high volume searches and applications, you take your lunch break, and then you come back and your whole afternoon is 30-minute chunks of the high impact approach, taking the
Yes.
jobs that you found that are perfect for you, applying online, going through the whole sometimes arduous application process, and then finding the person and connecting with them and communicating with them. Maybe you take a break from that and go to some strategic networking and reach out to some folks you haven't talked to in a while and reconnect and reestablish your relationship without asking for a job, just to reconnect.
Yes.
So you're building all these things and you bounce around just a little bit so it doesn't feel like you're staring at a screen doing one thing all day.
Right.
So that's one recommendation I have for people, like, kind of making this sustainable for themselves. What do you tell people?
Yeah, I think it's the Pomodoro technique.
Oh,
Is
yeah,
it?
I've heard
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that technique. Yeah, I definitely talk about breaking up their day. Like if they're unemployed, right? And this is all they're doing.
Essentially, yeah,
I also throw in walks and workouts and eating healthy. Not that I am, a fitness coach or nutrition coach or anything, but I do know the value of, well, take some time to focus on you, right? Take on some healthy habits. Especially if you don't have to be up at the crack of dawn. Sleep in a little bit, get a workout in, have a protein shake, and then sit down, right?
that's right.
I love the 30-minute technique. And I also tell people to break up the activities day by day. Like maybe Monday it's finding applications, Tuesday it's applying to applications, and Wednesday it's doing networking.
That's cool.
I also encourage in person because here in the Boise area, it's a very people friendly community. People like to shake hands and get to know each other. So I encourage them getting out of their house and going to networking events. And I'm kind of on the extroverted, introverted.
On
Yeah,
the
I can go
line?
both ways. Yeah, I can go both ways. I am just sometimes I love it, sometimes I don't. And I went to a networking event recently and you could see these little pods of people that knew each other. And it was very awkward. I found the one woman, she was all by herself. And I walked up to her and I'm like, I don't know anybody here. She's like, neither do I. I'm like, hi, I'm Stephanie. We got to talking. And it was a great conversation. It was a wonderful conversation. But just doing that, you meet one person, right? Make that your goal. You don't have to meet the whole room. That could be overwhelming.
Yes.
But yeah, I really encourage my clients to get out of the house and go do
Love that
things,
idea. Yep.
because they do get stuck. They think they have to be at the screen all the time. What do you tell your full-time working clients? Because
Yeah,
I
that's a
find
tough one.
that difficult. Mhm.
It's a super tough one. I typically say find 1 or 2 nights a week that you can do an hour, right? Break it up into 30-minute sessions. I encourage them to get up on a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning, depending on, like, family activities or church schedules or, trips that they have planned. But again, throw in an hour when you can, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's something where instead of sitting outside on your lunch break, you sit at your computer and you munch and you do some searches. And like you said, maybe lunchtime is for you to research and find positions. Your evenings are to apply to those positions. I think the cool thing with this is there is no one way to do it. Everyone can have a different method to do this. But what I tell people is
Right.
find what works for you because there are so many folks who this is the cadence. It happens so very often. I make a plan. I have that plan. I know what that plan is. And then on day 1, I do the plan and I'm super excited. And day 2, I do the plan and I'm super excited. And day 3, I do not do the plan. And so I'm really disheartened. And then I do nothing for a week because day 4, I'm mad about how I didn't do it on day 3. And then on day 5, I'm like, well, I haven't done it for 2 days. And then on day, like, it just perpetuates where if you don't do it, you're just never going to pick. So I don't care if you failed yesterday, right? Because failure is so arbitrary because you literally made up a plan, right? So if 45 minutes was too long and you got burnt out, just do 30 minutes next time. Who cares?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Like, that's
exactly. Be
totally fine.
kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself.
Be
It's
fine.
fine. It's
You
fine.
can. I worked with a client who was on the extreme introversion side of things, which was fascinating for me because I'm the exact opposite. I tested on Myers Briggs, I tested 91% extroverted or something.
I'm not
So,
surprised.
right, working with her was kind of a challenge though, because I had to come up with things that I've never had to think about before to help her. And one of the things I was like, okay, just do your job search at a Starbucks. Sit
Mhm.
out in public and do it. She was the type of person who, if she was going to walk to her mailbox, she would look out the window to make sure there was no one around who might talk to her before she went to get the mail. Like that level of introversion. But if she's not making connections, it's going to be harder to find a job. And so I want her to be making connections. And so it was the baby steps of like, just go to Starbucks and do your job search and put headphones in and don't talk to a single person. And and it took her a little bit to get over the hump and actually do it. But when she did, she was like, "Oh my gosh, that wasn't bad at all." I'm like, exactly. It's not as bad as you're afraid of, right? You didn't have to make 100 connections. You don't have to introduce yourself to anybody. Then it was, okay, now say hi to a neighbor. All right, now you have friends at church. Tell them you're looking for a job, right? Leverage your existing network, no matter how large or small or deep or surface level it is. Start to leverage the network. And every time she was like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And then she would do it and go, oh, that wasn't as bad as I thought. And then we got to go to the next step and the next step and the next step. But it was about getting her to be kind enough to herself to say, like, it's okay that you're not an extra like introvert is not wrong and extrovert is not right. It's just different styles of interacting with the world.
Very different.
So
Mhm.
getting her to be because she was like, I'm not an extrovert, so like I know that's terrible. I'm like, wait, what? No, it's just a different way of interacting with the world. Let's find ways that will actually work for you to
Mhm.
interact with the world and incorporate your job. So like, but seeing that transformation where she didn't become an extrovert and start talking to people, but she leveraged her existing network in a way that felt comfortable to her, even though it was a little unnerving at first. It was cool.
Yeah. That's wonderful. I love seeing transformations like that. Just our clients growing and growing. And then they land the job and they're super confident. It's the best. It is the absolute
The
best.
coolest.
Well, Mark, we could talk for hours.
We could.
This was
We
so much
probably
fun.
shouldn't, but we
We
could.
probably shouldn't, but we could. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am sure we will circle back and see you again. Everybody, this is Mark Missiano, career coach of Resume Ready. Check him out. My name is Stephanie Ray, Next Step Career Services. We're here to help you and we wish you the best. So have a great day.
Bye.